This is Gaming Through the Ages, and today we're taking a look at Maho Gakuen Lunar, or Magic School Lunar, for the Sega Saturn. Magic School is a spin-off of the popular Lunar RPG series, and was originally released in Japan for Sega's Game Gear handheld system as Lunar Walking School. But the version we're looking at for the Saturn has a handful of major enhancements. Not only were the graphics overhauled, the music reworked, and anime cutscenes added, but the story received more detail, including the addition of more playable characters. The battle system also went from a fairly simplistic first-person approach on the Game Gear to an approximation of the side battle view system used in other Lunar games. Let's first take a look at the story of Magic School. You take control of a small handful of characters, most notably a trio of girls central to the game. Ellie, arguably the somewhat main character of the narrative, who happens to be able to fly, and her best friend Reina, who the game will remind you several times loves food, are recruited by an old man named Glenn for a magic school located on a floating island called Ian. There they meet Senia, a beast girl with whom they quickly become good friends. The actual plot of Magic School is pretty lacking. Essentially, a woman named Barua and a man named Memphis from something called the Vile Tribe are trying to revive a great evil named D using a floating castle, and they want the power within Ian. They must be stopped by our heroes, so on and so forth. This story is split into 12 chapters, with 1 or 2 dungeons thrown into each chapter, and it's essentially the same plot of about half of the JRPGs ever made. However, it's the character interactions and humor that really make Magic School stand out. Most of the game takes place in a small village on the island of Ian, where several teachers who specialize in different types of magic take on new students as pupils. Whether it's a musical magic teacher trying to get one of the girls to stop singing off-key, a magical librarian whose books poke fun at the characters, or the instructor who runs the dojo trying to find out which student can be a real man by giving new students impossible tasks, like having to hold their breath for 5 minutes straight, just wandering around and talking to other characters is a lot of the game's charm. It also helps that while the game can be fairly lighthearted and sometimes corny, there are also a lot of moments that are genuinely humorous. Although the game is in Japanese, I've seen that there's been at least one translation that was being worked on, but it may have been cancelled. And on top of that, there are English walkthroughs available online, so it is playable for English speakers, but I did find a lot of the game's impact was in its comedy. The battle system within Magic School is almost too simple, but manages to have just enough going for it that I still found it enjoyable. You have the ability to do a physical attack, which is rarely worth using, the ability to run, the ability to defend, which restores magic points and lets you move your character's on-screen position, the ability to use magic, and eventually the ability to use combination magic. Magic attacks can affect areas of the screen, so the defend command can be used to strategically place characters. Likewise, the physical attack command will get characters right next to enemies if desired. That being said, strategy and placement isn't all that important, and the emphasis is really on using different magic attacks during random encounters, so much so that there's little else to focus on in the battle system at all. The game has no items or equipment menus. In fact, the only options in the menu are Use Magic, See Status, and Options. Although characters gain experience and level up, they gain new magic by talking to other characters in the game. Combination magic can also be obtained this way, or by using 2 compatible spells in combat, and then discussing it with the school's dean afterwards. Sometimes gaining new magic is automatic through the story sequences, but often magic can only be gained by talking to the right character at the right time. Fortunately, the interactions are usually enjoyable, so wandering around talking to characters rarely feels tedious. Unfortunately, the actual battles in Magic School do tend to feel tedious. The frequency of random encounters is often less than a second, and I found this made it extremely easy to lose all sense of direction in dungeons where everything tended to look pretty similar. Your character's HP and MP also slowly refills as you walk around, but I have no idea why, as the frequency of the encounters makes it totally pointless. Instead, you'll most likely just have to spend a battle every now and then using the defend command to raise everyone's MP. Characters are also fully healed upon level up, which I found especially helpful early in the game before I realized defending could raise your MP. Actually, if the game seems too easy for you, since it is a fairly easy game, I would recommend playing it without using the defend command. The graphics in Magic School Lunar are really colorful, with large sprites and hand-drawn backgrounds for encounters. The cutscenes are well done, and most of the time I would say the graphics are excellent. The various magic animations throughout the game are fun to watch, well done, and quick enough that you don't get tired of seeing them. The sprites also have some animation to them, so there's some animation present in the battle screen even when nothing's happening. Although still quite aesthetically pleasing, the repetitiveness of dungeons does do a disservice to the overall graphical presentation. There are also a couple times the game goes into early 3D CGI for cutscenes, and while it was certainly impressive for its time, looking back now it just clashes with the design for the rest of the game. That being said, these are nitpicks in an overall good-looking game. I do have to mention that I have a personal preference, however, for the pixel style of the original Game Gear version. The music, as is typical of the Lunar series, is top-notch, and its pace and tempo match the game's intended atmosphere in different situations excellently, whether it's the cheery tune that plays during leisurely walks around town, or the more intensely composed battle music. I only wish there were more than the small handful of songs heard throughout the game. All that being said, do I recommend Magic School Lunar? Well, if you can understand Japanese, then yes, I recommend it, as it's a fun RPG for the Sega Saturn with a lot of personality, and it's not overly expensive. I would probably also recommend it if you're a curious fan of the Lunar franchise, but its ties to other games are honestly almost non-existent. If you're just looking for a quick pick-up-and-play RPG with a simple battle system on your Saturn, and the language barrier is of no consequence to you, then also by all means try it out, since I should also mention that it features a Save Anywhere feature. Really, the only person I would say shouldn't play this game is anyone who doesn't like frequent random encounters, because I cannot stress enough how frequent they are. Overall, this was a fun and enjoyable game, and I'm glad I played through it, and I think it's a shame it didn't get translated back in the day, and maybe even given the working design treatment that Eternal Blue and the Silver Star happened to get.